And welcome everyone to the Shitlord Preachers podcast. This is episode 49. For those of you who are joining us today for the first time, this is the Shitlord Preachers podcast where my friend Brook Potter, who is in the UK, myself, Amos Joseph here in Minnesota, come together and basically have discussions regarding political, social, cultural commentary on different things, as well as pretty much anything that we really want to talk about, especially on days like today, like Easter. But yeah, basically it's where we're both former preachers, now we're former shitlords, coming on a podcast to you. So how's it going today, Brooke?
It's going well, Amos. I have to confess to the audience that I am not hungover, but almost overslept. So my brain is still kind of waking up. Almost missed the show. Didn't, but I almost did. And yes, to all of our listeners around the world, happy Easter or happy Ishtar or whatever your particular brand of faith might be today. It's a public holiday out here today. And it's actually like 23 or 24 degrees Celsius out here. Really nice weather.
Wow.
So yeah, it's good, man. I mean, we're 20 episodes short of a really great party episode, but it's really good to know, we're keeping at it. We're getting close to a year, and we got to do also something for the 69, just because, someone's been dating. So back to you, Amos.
Yeah. So for the listeners who've been keeping up, not a university student, came over and stayed the night on Friday night. And then we had breakfast the next morning. So
you made her breakfast.
I did make her breakfast.
Have to do the walk of shame.
We won't comment on that. So
yeah, okay, good.
made her breakfast, and we just spent some time.
Did she eat the breakfast off your cock?
No, she ate it out of the plate. So
okay, on your cock.
Oh God. So we had breakfast and spent some time, and then something came up, bit of a family deal that she absolutely had to go. So that was a little bit of a bummer, but it was out of our control. So anyway, so that was that, and I will be seeing her next weekend. So
yeah, congratulations, man. Girls staying over, that kind of stuff. It's good.
Yeah.
And flexing some, masculine muscles and making a breakfast.
Yeah.
4 points. Excellent. Good stuff, man.
But yeah, so that's what's going on today. Do you have any plans for Easter today, Brooke?
Well, today is pretty much over. It's 5 p.m. here. And I didn't do fuck all today, right? And that's mostly because I was probably partying really, really hard last night. I was drinking from about 2 p.m. yesterday. I get it's like a water park kind of thing we have out here. Pulling back the rum and cokes. I was with my flatmates, his fiance, and stuff like that. And yeah, she had like 4 beers and she just like totally blitted, just like boom, gone. And we had to walk back, and I'm like, she's only had 4 beers, man. I've like 6 rum and cokes. I'm fine, man. Get down the road. The two of them pull into the flat. I was like, oh well, fuck this. I'm going to the pub. And I went to the pub. And I was buying drinks, and I was like doubling up, give me spice rum, pull out the Kraken and stuff. I don't know, polished off like another 6 or 8. And then I went to the local wine bar, and we basically closed up the shop. And yeah, that was kind of my party night until, I don't know, I think they closed up at about just after 1. So pretty much a good solid 12 hours of drinking. Yeah. That would do it. So that was Easter. Easter was delicious. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on today for me. I'm probably gonna be kind of like you, doing fuck all anything, because there wasn't any. We didn't. The family didn't make any plans for today, and most of the family is scattered across doing different things. There wasn't any central planning, so to speak.
So are you saying that your family is in anarchy? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's good,
yeah.
man.
days like today are interesting nowadays. It's just it's feeling like more so like just another day rather than maybe as before where it was like go to church, then you go to brunch, then you have like then you maybe go to a dinner or something. It's, there's all this talk about what happened. It's not just Easter Sunday, it's Resurrection Sunday and all this stuff.
Right.
Uh, which is kind of what we want to touch on today, right?
Yes, yes. I think in the spirit of the festivities, we will definitely be discussing, some of our insight into the spirit of the festivities.
I know. So I was actually editing the episode from last week, and I came across one part where we talked about like, hey, maybe we should talk about what we call Christianese next week. So, excuse me. So I thought about that, and I was like, okay, man, there's a lot we can go on to that. Christianese, for the listeners, is basically what we refer to as pretty much the language, the words, the phrasing, just the patterns you kind of can see among Christians typically that are very code word ish, even though they might not admit to that, but it's very much code, and it's just and sometimes it's just running a script basically. It's just say
it's
this
it's it's a
word,
polite
mean
way of
that.
saying people are bullshitting you and they're being fake, but they're not being overtly rude.
Right. I mean, sometimes it's, there is genuine meaning behind it, but because people have become so accustomed to saying these phrases and slangs and words that they it loses its authenticity. It's not doesn't feel genuine anymore. It's just kind of like, you know, just saying the words, going through the motions, so to speak, which surprisingly is something that Christians try to get out of. At least they claim they try to get out of. You
Correct.
know,
I mean,
making the
there's.
faith your own.
I mean, me and my flatmate have actually been having a very interesting discussion about this very topic. Um, for those of you who might be following me on Instagram, I went to the London Hillsong Church up by Oxford Circus and stuff like that. And both he and I mean, we've been on a very interesting spiritual journey. I'd say, yeah, he's definitely come leaps and bounds in a very short period of time. He's had a very very rough experience with his family and just some really shit experiences from the church and just garbage. But nonetheless, he still holds to the tradition. He still holds to his faith, and he wanted his fiance to experience just like a little window into what he used to be involved in. That's why we went. And while we were there, I had forgotten all of that Christianese bullshit. Like I'd forgotten the fake smiles, the turn around and greet someone, and you have to smile at this person who you don't even know and try to act genuine, and everybody's fine, and they've got all these cliche stuff. I mean, he and I. Basically, the only reason I would go to a church is for fellowship, is to connect with people. But the problem is, most of these people are so trapped in, I mean, different dogmas, different variations of Christianity, whatever. The last thing they're really allowed to be in a lot of ways is authentic. And that makes connection and fellowship very, very difficult. And that's how we felt. We just felt it was plastic, and that we just left. He wanted to leave, although he was trapped in his pew. And I was trying to I was polite, and I waited till the end. And yeah, we just kind of left there, like didn't really feel connected to this place, the people, the music, nothing. That sound about right? When's the last time you've been to church?
um, it was actually a Catholic church, my
Mm,
hometown Catholic church. Probably it was an Easter 2017, 16.
okay, yeah, about 2-3 years ago.
Yeah, and I mean the fact is I got to really think about it is like a while ago. Um, so yeah, I mean, funny enough, it being it was a Catholic church. Yeah, they have their brand of Christianese, so to speak, but it's not like the level, at least that I've experienced in more your more evangelical, or some might refer to as the Protestant churches. Because with the Catholics, it's all ritual. With the Christians, with the rest of the Christians, it's all like a veil almost.
Yes. I mean, we,
I
we can
mean,
touch on that.
yeah, like I mean, what the Catholics at least have the rituals, and they have means of like really, I guess, clearing themselves of an amount of bullshit in their life. I'd say confession,
Right.
drinking.
They are allowed to drink in the Catholic Church. That's true.
Yeah, so I think that kind of helps them, whereas the evangelical types are more interested in putting up fronts.
I mean,
And
to be fair, that's a very U.S. thing. The no drinking because over here the evangelical church meets in the pub, right? So Europe
right.
is a little different in that respect, but I understand the point nonetheless.
Yeah. So yeah, the whole drinking thing, and then of course the whole there is no real, they'll talk about like how the scriptures talk about like confessing of sins among, what is it, Book of James talks about confessing sins.
Yeah, one to another. I
Yeah.
can't remember if it's the Book of James or not.
And then but
Yeah,
the church, yeah, the Protestant, the evangelicals don't really do any of that. They like it, it's all kind of buried under the surface pretty much. And there's more room to set up fronts. It's more room for this Christianese that we are pretty much touching on. So
I mean, and there's so many ways that the Protestants could hide. The Catholics too, I guess. Well, I mean, no, any faith truly, but there's so many ways that the Christian faith allows people to do that. Like I know a personal story of a drummer. I'll just say this guy in the church. He was a drummer, worship leader, and he was involved in what would not be considered kosher behavior in the church. And the levels of this kind of fronting that takes place in the church. The evangelical churches believe if you take communion, which is the bread and wine, if you take it unworthily, not that they know what that means, but they basically think that means, if you eat it because you're sinful, if you've been doing a lot of, coke and like fucking bitches and, just doing all this shit, and then you go up in church and you play the drums or whatever the case is, and then you take the communion, you're basically bringing damnation upon yourself. And I know that this drummer, he was like partying it up. I mean, yeah. But he confessed to me many years later that he would have to like pretend he was the holiest motherfucker there and just put that solace thing on his face, that pious look every time he took that communion, because he knew he wasn't like in the tradition. He knew he wasn't living right. But he knew not taking the communion would bring the wrath of the Christians. Like he knew everybody would be like, "What's going on, brother?" And they'd want to get all up in his business. And he
damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, he would fake it. And he said that it was a challenge every week to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember oh boy. I mean, there was just churches that I went to growing up. There would be, I mean, this type of language, the way people talked, also tended to influence how they think. Their logic kind of had huge holes in it. Like you know about, like, that what's known as the prosperity gospel. There's a lot of this, like, if you
Yes.
pray and you give your tithes and offerings enough, you believe enough, you pray enough, God is going to bless you in a way of, like, some sort of financial or business or just success in that way.
Yes. Yes.
Um, and there would be a lot of views on that I just didn't quite understand, because people would take that to mean pretty much any success, regardless of what they were doing, was, for example, someone said, oh, so I needed a car.
Mm.
They're praying for, I want a car that's this price, and that it runs well. So they pray, they quote unquote pray for it. And then by you know, some chance, someone comes along who's in a situation where they need to sell their car,
Mhm.
and they'll buy the car. So they're like, hey, God answered the prayer and we got a car. But I've seen cases where people have that happen, and then they're like, once they start telling the story of how they got the car, it starts to reveal, like, the person they bought the car from is really, is in a really fucked up situation. They really needed the cash. They were willing to
Mm.
sell at any price, and then they just had to, like, they needed the money. Like, they had to
Yeah.
sacrifice the car for the money and all this and that. And I'm like, someone else is suffering at your, supposed, answered prayer,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you're more taking it as God blessed me at the expense of someone else. And it's like, or even in cases where it's like, oh, it was another person at my church,
Mm.
and it's like, ooh, really, just fuck everyone else kind of thing. There was a story I heard. He was a leader at so this was like the sixth through, like, the middle school, so like fifth, sixth, seventh grade, so um early teens ministry.
Mm.
And someone went up and basically shared, we always, the testimony, quote unquote. Testimony is basically like a testimonial and a commercial. It's really what it is.
Mhm.
Here's what God did for me. And this guy was saying, oh, work was, he says, I'm a contractor. I do work with houses, whether it's roofing, siding, stuff like that. And you know how, like, here in the US, how the houses are built with their siding. It's kind of this vinyl siding, or sometimes it's metal,
Mhm.
and especially in the Midwest, it's pretty big. And he said, I was not getting a lot of work, bills were coming up, and it was tough.
Mm.
And then he said, and then so I prayed that I needed more work. I wanted to be able to do more work, and he said, and then such and such a day, a hailstorm came. I was like, oh, and then I was like, I mean, even as a kid, I, like, kind of look like, wait, yeah, I get it. Yeah, business wise, yeah, he gets all this business in
Yeah.
this town, but people's houses got damaged.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
losing money on this.
Yeah.
And I,
Exactly.
I even brought this up to my dad, I remember, at that age, and he's like, no, 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 no. That's his business, though. God is blessing his business. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, but what?
Yeah. Exactly. It
That's how
was.
much. Yeah. Go
It's the
ahead.
unseen. It's the right. So this is what Bastiat, Frederick Bastiat, would talk about. Like, or the church only wants to see the blessing, right? And they're not really too concerned about where it came from or how it came about. And I think this is the big disconnect. Now, not obviously not all churches, not all Christians and stuff like that. I think we should make that a point. Um, but yeah, this is kind of how it is. They're trying to sell it in a lot of ways. And I get it. That's your job, and there are some great tenets to it. And I know from my experience, yeah, my faith has been very important to me, and it's got me through some pretty dark times and all that kind of stuff. I don't hold the same beliefs that I did, but at the same time, they are selling it, and none of that is necessary. Like there isn't much of a scriptural basis for testimonies. There isn't much of a making a spectacle of these things. In fact, I think a lot of those things are very unnatural, and they actually could do a lot of damage because okay, so this gentleman talked about his siding business. Yeah, but somebody in his audience could have had their house wrecked because of that hailstorm, and they can't talk about it, right? They've got like issues, they got financial burden or whatever, but because this guy's gone up there and he's bigged up God and bigged up the hailstorm as a blessing, this guy's gonna feel pretty shit for like shitting all over this man's testimony, so he's gonna stay quiet.
And that's the thing is, yeah, as long as you're the first one to claim a blessing, everyone else could be, countering that claim is silenced just by, yeah. But I mean, that's more of like a specific belief that's just kind of like really fucked up. But surprisingly, is a lot of people are really buying into it.
Well, you have to be fair. You have to buy into it. Otherwise, well, you wouldn't be there. Or you would incur the wrath of the church police.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough because I think this has its flaws too, is because the people get so caught up in they very much get into what is it, the love of money, and it's not, and understand, like, I don't take the strong view like the love of money is the root of all evil, but for Christians who claim to believe the Bible as to be without error, inerrant is the term, and then they where then you have this whole stream of Christianity that is completely following just money, 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 success, success, success. I started out with one semi truck, and God bless me, now I'm a multimillionaire. It's like, great. I'm pretty sure faith probably played some role in motivating them to be more successful. That's probably it.
Sure.
But to go and say like, oh, like, not to sound like a freaking socialist here, but there are cases, a lot of cases where their success is at the expense of someone else.
I mean, there's no way we can say that for sure.
Right, but I mean, when you see a lot of this, I prayed that I need a car, so I bought a car off someone who was really desperate and willing to haggle for like a ridiculously low price.
Right.
I do citing.
To be fair though, that if the person is really desperate for money, they are being blessed with the money they need, even though they're in a shitty situation.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, I get that.
It's not great, but it's not the best example. But I do know what you mean in terms of they're not necessarily aware of the impact that they have. Right? It's kind of like we have what was it, Generation Extinction or some Destination one of these crazy lunatic environmental groups that's shitting all over London at the moment. Some flipping dame woman flew all the way from Los Angeles on her jet to come and be arrested outside Parliament. Right? So okay, these are the psychopath environmentalist people, right? These are the kind of the loons. But they're leaving a fucking garbage trail, all over the city. Right? These are the people, we got 12 years to live, climate change, yada, yada, yada. But they're making a fucking mess. Right? That's a little bit. I know obviously we can't say all churches, we can't say all Christians, but there is a wake of destruction from the church that I think a lot of people need to acknowledge. Yeah, I mean, I've heard real horror stories of parents to LGBTQ, RF, whatever kids, like literally kicking the kids out. Right? I mean, there's
them out, sending them to those camps, probably in some cases.
Right. Pray away the gay and stuff like that. There's a lady out here. Her son I mean, she's rather dogmatic. She's in a very regimented form of the faith. She has a history one of the institutions you used to work with, and her son is it appears I don't know her son personally, but it appears he's a homosexual. And I mean, she is just
I know who you're talking about.
yeah, and she is just gone. Like, she really thinks that being harsh on this kid until he changes his sexual orientation is doing the Lord's work.
Yeah, no, I actually know now. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is the wake of destruction. I mean, a very good friend of mine from Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, he's now atheist. He's like militant atheist, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know him too. I don't necessarily think the church did that to him, but I think there are a lot of roots that come from the church where now he's not one of those quiet atheists like you believe what you believe and I believe what. No, he's shitting on everything, right? And even stuff he knows isn't accurate, like the whole Horace and Jesus story, where supposedly they're both born on the 25th of December, both born of virgin, and supposedly all these mirroring things. All of that's nonsense. Anybody read the story of Horace? There's no similarity.
Real quick before we get into that. So
Yeah.
someone in the chat popped up here. Thoughts on the Pete Buttigieg? I think he's the gay mayor presidential candidate for the Democrats. I honestly don't know much about him. All I know is a big part of why people are really pushing him is the fact that he's gay. Which I think is just a bullshit position to try to push. Like, hey, I'm gay, therefore vote for me to be president. Identity politics.
That is going to be the platform of the Democratic Party.
Oh yeah, the Democrats are going to play oppression Olympics all over the place.
Yeah.
I think there was like because him and Mike Pence, I think, had some like clashes. But anyways, yeah, cool. Not too many thoughts. I haven't really weighed in too much on the presidential candidates except like Andrew Yang. Little bit on Bill Weld, but just because he was a former VP candidate for the Libertarian Party. But I don't know about the election. There's just way too many Democrats to weigh in on right now.
I mean, this is basically what the Republicans had the last time, right? And to be fair, I think in U.S. elections, it generally tends to go 2 terms with the Democrats, 2 terms with the Republicans, 2 terms back and forth. A couple breaks to that was Bush the senior. He was elected once after the initial Iraq War, and he didn't get back in. He lost to Clinton. And there are probably a couple other cases. I can't think of them offhand. So Bildwell jumping in at this point to try and like stand on the tracks of the Trump train. Yeah, I don't think that's the smartest position for him.
Yeah.
But the Democrats know that they've got to try and push for something. So they had some success with the midterms. They think they've got momentum. I don't really see it, but I mean, I'm not there.
There was an article headline I saw, and it was so funny. It said, in quotes, electability, end quote, it was is the new direction for the 2020 Democrats.
Right.
And then it said in a subtitle, unfortunately, that could mean white and male.
Right.
I was like, oh.
They think they're going to win with this.
It's like either they're going to have to go full oppression Olympics, try to get the most diverse candidate, or they have to just own up to the fact that, maybe we want a white guy.
Yeah, it's quite possible. I think the US voter doesn't really care about race or or gender. Some do, granted, you're always going to get a few fringe, but I think people just want somebody who's going to get off their back and let them get on with what they want to do. Right? So that's what Trump does. Trump resonates with the everyman. Right.
He's he's pretty much the right-wing populace, and now what they're trying to see is to get, I guess, a left-wing populace.
Right, right. Well, I mean, pretty much any candidate is a populist. I'm not sure what does that mean in American politics.
Populism, I get, is from my understanding is the sort of the appeal to the common man, appeal to a lot of like the plight of the middle class, a lot of yeah, the common man, pretty much.
Right, right. That's what I thought. I mean,
So,
I would say that's pretty much every candidate, but okay.
but more so, like really playing like the "I'm with you," because
Right.
like Trump was, so then the jobs and bringing the jobs back, that's a big one. The
Hmm.
wall,
Hmm.
um, you know, infrastructure, a lot of these things that the common man might see a lot of. Whereas, Bernie is more. I mean, Bernie had some populism in what he was saying, but he kind of was really playing up the "let's go after the big banks, let's go after the rich people" kind of thing too.
Right,
Whereas
right.
Trump was very like, you didn't hear Trump talk much about rich people or
Correct.
the big banks. And so like another thing is people are saying like AOC is like the populist of the left because
Right.
she's meeting with people. She's really trying to bring it down to like she has her positions on different things, but it's all very much like trying to bring other people in. I don't know if you saw a video of her. So they did kind of like she narrated a video that was kind of like showing like an illustration. So it was showing these different things. It was like an AOC in the year 2050, looking back on when she passed the Green New Deal.
Right.
And this, talking about like, all it took was a few, this and that, seeing the changes that you wanted, whatever. Just this whole thing about how like, and then we save the planet. Like,
Jeez.
when I was on the bullet train from, Seattle to DC.
Oh, this is crazy. This is great. I mean, have you
uh,
read the Green New Deal?
Parts of it.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. I mean, I haven't read. I saw the bullet points, and I've heard a lot of commentary on it. But this woman is certifiable.
90 some odd $1 trillion in the next few years to spend.
Yeah, yeah. Well, apparently you only have like 12 more years, so let's party it up, man. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
But no, back to the Christianese thing though. What are some of your favorite Christianese words, and we'll talk about them.
Oh well, you mean like the phrases that people say?
Right, right. I mean, and it could be just one. It's not necessarily like specific word, but even just one word things. Like, I know we talked about like the whole this idea of sort of brotherhood or family within church. That gets a little weird.
Sure, sure. I mean, there's a lot. Back in Trinidad and Tobago, there were a lot of phrases, a lot of catchphrases. All right, so how you doing, brother? Oh, I'm too blessed to be stressed. Right, I'm too anointed to be disappointed. I mean, just some corny
Okay,
shit, right?
those are some, those are. I mean, it makes sense. It sounds so typical, but I never heard that here.
No, no, it's a Caribbean thing. You'd hear that, in the Caribbean and stuff like that. It's kind of whimsical, You think you're clever or whatever. So I mean, yeah, we had a lot of that. Now the Caribbean churches, if anybody's ever been, very lively, very social, and for the most part, good people. But they do fall into a lot of this kind of Christianese. And the reason for that, of course, is because the overlords are looking, right? So everybody's looking out for wolves in sheep's clothing, as if they understand what that means. But they basically think that means, they got to look at everybody's behavior, what they're doing, and whatever, whatever. So,
Right, right.
yeah, those are the big ones. So that was all over the radio and stuff like that. Another big one, and it all expressed an idea that I'm fine. And you've heard me talk on this a lot, in the past, right? You go into a church, everybody's fine. How are you doing, bro? I'm fine. I'm strong in the Lord. I'm whatever. And the reason for that again is because if you actually confess, like, hey, bro, I'm struggling, like shit's going down, bills are due, the wife is thinking about leaving me. She's going to take all my stuff. I'm looking at, divorce, rape, whatever. And you start to talk honestly, about the lump you've got on your dick and, just like some real raw stuff. The people in the church have no real answer. Well, I can't say they have no real answer, but the generic response would be like, I'm going to pray for you, brother, or I'm going to pray for you, sister. And I mean, some do. I'll give props. Some people would be like, brother, come with me. Let's go sit, have a coffee, have a beer. Let's talk it out. Like, some people genuinely care, right? So I don't want to try and shit on everyone. But the generic response will be like, holy fuck, this guy is being cursed by the devil. I don't want to be near him. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to pray for you and get the fuck out of here.
The ones who actually go out and actually, like you said, the ones who actually like take people out, like, hey, let's go get a drink, get coffee.
Yeah.
The people who are doing that.
Yeah.
You know what they say about them? Oh, they have a gift.
Yeah. Yeah. They're unique.
Yeah. It's not like, no, they're just good people that know, like, hey, maybe I should be a friend.
Exactly. I think nothing irritated me more than the I'm fine at church. Right. And nobody's fucking fine, because at the end of the night, whatever service, they do an altar call and everybody gets up and rededicates their life to the Lord, and everybody's crying and, oh Lord, forgive me, for those shots of tequila I took off that Brazil, the tits off that German woman last night. I mean, they're all messed up, and nobody wants to own that. Right.
Are you confessing, Brook?
Oh no, the German titty shots? No, of course not. But
as he takes a drink of water to kind of
that's none of my business. Exactly. Where's my tea? No, but that has always been my issue with church. Like, if you had a real issue, I've been in a lot of churches. I've helped build a couple churches. I've been parts of different ministries, right? And again, I'm not saying all, because there are real people who really love the Lord and love people in a church. And I do enjoy meeting those people. There are fewer and fewer of them that I've met. Maybe it's because I'm getting older, right? Maybe it's a young people's game. I look too adult at this point. But yeah, when I was going through real hell, I just never got the human connection. And I'm one of those people. I believe in the tribe. I believe that we need a community to really heal. Like, I think we find ourselves in a community. I don't think anybody should really be isolated. And I don't think some of the most lonely times I've, well, not just lonely, but felt alone, has been in the church. Supposedly the family, right?
Mm-hmm. Brother,
sister. It's just, and what is most disheartening in that whole thing is, especially when my doctrine started to change, and I might do a video on this actually. The same people who swore, oh yeah, brother, I was there at their wedding, and I was there, we broke bread together, we did all that tralala. And the minute I started to like change what I believed, suddenly I'm the outcast. Suddenly I'm the wolf in sheep's clothing. I'm the Jezebel. I'm all these other things, just because I changed my beliefs. And that's the other unspoken pressure that's on people in churches, that you got to believe like us. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I remember the phrases that they used here was, how are you doing? A blessed and highly favored brother. Oh,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Blessed and high. I was like, oh boy. And man, and then there was, of course, the other phrases like you were saying. So you have these conversations. You're trying to have a real conversation. What's going on? It's never I'm having problems or I'm having this. It's always I'm struggling with this.
Yeah.
I'm backsliding. That's another one.
Right.
And then there were people that we know that also had to that use those phrases to kind of change people's thinking. You never backslide, you always slide forward, kind of thing, to really get people to think changing of like doctrine and beliefs and such. And if you ever tried to help anyone whether it's through some sort of scriptural means, like, well, brother, this scripture says this and that scripture says that, and when Jesus said this here, here, and here, he meant this, that, and there, and the other, and whatever.
Mhm.
And it in its own way, it's supposed to help people. When you actually have genuine like insight for someone, and they wouldn't say like, yeah, they wouldn't have that genuine like receptive attitude, like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that's gonna help. They would
Yeah.
just go, I received that, brother. And they probably wouldn't get it. I mean, they're really just feeding you shit. Like, yeah, sure.
Whatever.
In some cases, maybe people want to do something with that, but by saying that, it's just a script you're running. It's just kind of, oh, yeah, words, things, sounds right. Guess it's
Yeah.
cool. And also, oh my god, the smiles.
They're creepy. I mean, even when I went to the London church, there are a whole bunch of greeters at the. Lots of nice girls, by the way, Amos. If you want to like check out some London bitches, man. But anyway, no, the kind of smile that they greet you at the door as a stranger. Hi, and it's like, please don't do that. Like, you just look so fucking creepy smiling at me like that. But that's what I mean. Did you ever do a greeting position? Do you know what that's like?
My mom did it.
Yeah.
My dad.
Did they have smiling classes?
No, I don't remember what exactly she did, but my parents at some points wanted to actually be involved with helping out with different church. So I've told you I go to one. I used to go to, let's just say, a very large church here in the state. Just saying that doesn't say much either, but a few thousand people went to this church. Excuse me, and they had all sorts of ministries. I mean, there was just, you could be the greeters, ushers,
Parking lot.
parking lot, like, parking lot ministry. I was like, the fuck is park? I mean, just say parking attendants, people that are helping direct traffic, but no, it's parking ministry. Like, you can minister to people. And my dad would never use, he would never get, so when he was sick, he never had, what was it? There was no handicap parking for him. It was the healing spot.
Right.
People park here because they need healing. Well, it's just priority parking. It's just, to park closer to the front door.
Somebody probably felt very special naming that section the healing section. They probably, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and there was just so many things people would just say, and with all the phrases, it does a little, like I mentioned the Catholic Church. It sounds a little bit like that, Lord be with you and also with you,
The greater good.
It's just all these things, and it just pops out in different ways. Like you say, yeah, smiles, phrases, and here was the other weird thing that I never really understood was like, of course the brother and sister. Like, it's always, a brother, a sister. There's even, people that had like spiritual fathers, spiritual mothers, Jesus fucking, spiritual cousins and whatnot. I don't know. And the one thing too, people had different ways of referring to God. God, Heavenly Father. Daddy really got a little weird.
Daddy is a bit strange, sure.
I mean,
depends on the context and if she's screaming it.
I mean, looking back now, knowing what I know, hearing about all the weird stuff people do, and I'm just imagining, like, there were women in the church that would just, I just prayed to Daddy, and I'm like, oh God, don't say that. Just,
yeah.
But like, I stopped. I mean, granted, I feel it was a little late for me, but I stopped calling my dad Daddy, and like 13 or 14.
Right.
Just something clicked, and I was like, I'm gonna start calling him Dad.
I don't think I ever called my dad daddy.
I did all the way till like early teens. I
Okay.
was such a. I mean, I'll just admit that I felt like a very sheltered kid and just never had that challenge because
Right.
most of the time I'm speaking English. I'm speaking it with my family. I wasn't speaking it because we were in Taiwan and I didn't speak it around people there. So calling him daddy was no big deal.
Yeah.
And then once I made it to like, school here in the States, I think at one time it slipped out and I said, yeah, so I was talking to my daddy and people were like, what? And I was like, gonna change this. Hey, Dad.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I ever used. I mean, I think I must have done it, but I don't recall at any point when that was the case. But that would be creepy in church. I don't like. I think I did it once in church, and I think somebody was kind of talking about like God as a father and like really kind of connect with your dad, and he had like everybody like screaming out, "Daddy, Daddy!" And I think I did it once, and I was like, "What the hell am I doing?" And then it's
Yeah,
like,
especially when women are just like talking about it. Like, granted, they're talking about some experience they had, and you're trying to like take it seriously, but it's daddy, and it's like, oof. I mean, even like we'll just say the preacher we knew about with the dreads, the
yeah,
really
yeah, yeah,
crazy thing.
yeah.
He would, daddy, and I'm like, so emasculating. It's just
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely something. That's definitely something. I don't
uh,
as again, I think the whole premise of church, like I think what we do as church is unnatural, right? That's my personal belief. I think the early church, it was a gathering of people, it was like a banquet, and everybody spoke, everybody ate, everybody was like you knew each other, right? So when you go to these megalathon kind of churches with thousands of people, you don't know anybody there. There's no way to really connect, right? Which is what you really need, what really church is supposed to be about, is about connecting with other people. So this whole structure, I'm not surprised, it's not working for people.
yeah,
Yeah. And when they go on this journey of eventually you start to look for the real thing, right? And that takes you down many trails, sometimes into different types of ministries, different types of activities, different types of thinking. And it's ironic, you actually have to deprogram yourself. Actually, you could go full circle and basically come back to being human, like truly human. And that's what the church doesn't want you to be, right?
being real with like shit that's going on
Yeah.
in your life. That's just talking about things. Yeah, I mean, small, discussion groups on Facebook or communities, or even like in some cases freaking shit posting groups
Mm,
um exhibit more natural like community behaviors than like church does, because it's just
correct.
people being real and sharing some, depending on the context, they're sharing something a little bit more raw than like just in terms of depth, like what is going on with your life. um
Correct. Correct. And that's what we are looking for, life, right? Even in the Christian frame, right? Jesus said, I've come that you might have life and have it more abundantly. So even in the Christian frame, there is the concept of life. You need to experience this life. But everything that the church is offering is not, it's not really full of life, right? It's I mean, some things, sure. But you could actually have a much more genuine, like, this was my experience. I went to a concert, and it was a rock concert, and everybody's like headbanging, and it's like groar and like devil worship music, as we say in Trinidad. But I felt more connected in that sphere than I had in church, right? And even though I didn't know these people, we were only united because of the music. There was a sense of unity, even when we were in the mosh pits, right? They weren't gonna like headbutt you, like they weren't, I mean, it was tough. You were gonna get hit and you were gonna get moved around, but it was like a respect. Like, you're gonna step in here, all right, but we're not gonna beat the shit out of you, kind of thing, right? There was this unspoken bond that we had in that rock concert. And I remember this was I was still in church at that time. I was going through a lot of stuff, and I remember just feeling so much more alive and connected with that than what I was doing in church. Does that resonate with you? Can you speak to those kind of experiences?
Yeah, in some ways. Yeah, the church itself, like going to church, never really felt. I don't think I've ever been to a church that really had any that gave me any sense of like genuine like connection with people. Um, oh, I'm trying to think what places I really had that.
Like we had it on our trips, but it wasn't in the
Yeah,
church. It was us hanging out, right?
yeah. When we would go out to eat or something, whether it was just a couple of us versus a dozen of us, like we had.
Yes.
Um, a lot more fun doing that. A
Yeah.
lot more connecting doing that. Even just oh, so the last guy we worked with, when he would invite us to his place,
Mm.
spend a few days with him playing video games.
Yeah.
Playing video games, playing with his kids, just
Nazi
talking.
zombies.
Nazi zombies, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
what? I mean, granted, I freaking sucked, but it was still like there was some bonding there. Like, that's more church and if you want to say Christ-like in terms of relationship than sitting in church and just preaching. And now, unfortunately, that whole thing is just church and schools. It's not. I
I mean,
really
honestly, we don't know. We don't know what he's doing
we don't
personally.
know. We don't know. But I mean, it's um you don't see as much of that. Like, there were whole videos about like you not knowing
Yeah.
what a taco was.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was just having fun. And now you don't see that as much.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is again why I think this whole thing is unnatural. Yeah. So again, my understanding, my journey of faith has brought me to the point where I believe we're on earth to answer two questions, which is who am I and who is God. That's kind of my thing. And the only real way you can discover who you are is by living your life. And you got to try stuff. You got to do stuff. You got to figure out, oh, I like this, I don't like that, and develop and grow into who he's made you to be. That's my philosophy, right? Um, Now the church does not necessarily want that, right? The church, at least the evangelical church, for the most part, wants you to be anything but human. Because in their ideology, they think that being human is an evil thing, that sin and whatever lives in the human body, and you need to beat your flesh into submission through some Christian discipline, and you got to get all that shit handled, and then you'll be more like our favorite worship leader or whoever, be more like the pastor. So the whole message of church is don't be you, be someone else, be better than what you are, right? So the church is trying to disconnect themselves from their humanity. Very, very similar to something that like some Buddhist sects do that as well, where they try to empty themselves to become like nothing. So they all dress the same. They all, do the same. They try to forsake materialism. This is all a form of Gnosticism, right? This is all a form of dualism. It's in every religion. Every religion has this, but it denies a very big part of who we are, which is this body, the desires that come with it, the passions, the dislikes, everything else. This is us. And that's what the church has never got their handle on. They've never got a grip on humanity. Well, at least the evangelical church. The Catholic Church, they know you're human, right? I think that's why they allow you to drink and whatever. They have different issues because they obviously don't emphasize probably more of the organic because it's all scripted and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
they
I mean,
yeah.
like I said with a confession, like Christian, Catholics who make a routine visit to confession,
Mhm.
at least they're getting some shit out of the way. Like they're venting something. They're like, yeah, did this, did that, and okay, say your prayers and you'll be fine. And it's like, but at least they're saying it to someone. Whereas it's like now you have, among evangelicals, you have unspoken prayer requests.
Yes. Yeah.
You
Because people are
have,
afraid to speak.
yeah, you have just, excuse me. I mean, regardless of what people might think about something like, like porn,
Mhm.
you don't talk about that in church.
Unless
Some
you're
churches,
confessing that you've been delivered.
but even, yeah, unless you're delivered of it, like you're not saying like, man, I was whacking off like a dozen times yesterday, and I mean, and people would just go, they would think you have a freaking demon or something. It's like, no, there's a
Yes.
real problem going on where someone is lacking, connection, or they have a real addiction problem or something, and they just can't, and you start saying that, and they're just like, ooh, yeah, how about you talk to the pastor in private about that, maybe, if he feels like
Mhm.
it, like, you know, and then he's going to spend the next like couple days like deliverance and fasting and prayer and whatnot, and it's like whereas if you go to the church and like, hey, I did this and that and the other, and they're like, go to Catholic church and they're like, yeah, just, yeah, probably not the best, but say your prayers.
Yeah. And again, I think that's why the evangelical church is in a lot of trouble, especially because of they're not dealing with sexuality in a positive way. They're not dealing with our humanity in a positive way.
I
And
mean, you've got the Bible Belt preachers that are getting caught with, multiple partners or infidelity, or
yeah, because that shit's gonna come out, man.
the gay strip clubs.
Yeah, that's a thing too. That's a thing too. Like I remember I had a friend of mine operate a hotel, and they used to have like conferences in the hotel and stuff like that. And he would say that when there was like a pastors conference, the amount of porn that would be purchased like through the television thing on that was like records. The record amount of porn was being but it's a real issue. The reason it's an issue is because they're not addressing people's humanity, right? So in the evangelical church, it's all spirit, everything's spiritual, right? Or you have a thing with porn, it's not you, it's sex demon, it's oh
The flesh.
the flesh. We blame everything else and we cut everything up and divide it. And we try to get in the West, in the evangelical church, we try to get you to disassociate from it, right? And we say, okay, well, you're a new creation and you got this new identity in Christ. So it's not really you, it's really Christ. And just focus on Christ. All right, Christ over there, bless Christ, right? But the problem is, it's also still you. And they never address that, right? Yes, you have this new identity in Christ, but it's still a new identity. It's still you, right? And I describe it as, okay, if you want an analogy to that, it's a lamp. Yes, the bulb is Christ, and the bulb is, everybody's got the bulb. That's the thing that's the same, but the shade that's like refracting all the light coming off of it, all of that's unique, and that's you. And you have a unique way of shining that light into the world. What the church is trying to do is trying to get the shade off, right? And that's what they're trying to get rid of, which is you. And that's the problem. No, you're not supposed to get rid of that. You're supposed to discover what that is. And because it's who he made you and all this kind of stuff. And that's when you'll feel most alive, is only when you're being yourself. And that's where the church, the evangelical church, is failing.
Yeah, humanity. I talked about this with not a university student, actually. Humor. So the thing about humor, which is so tricky, we touched on this because I was talking about like free speech, but humor, especially like dark humor, more humor that's maybe not quite as PC friendly.
Dank.
Yeah, it's important that we explore that and we're exposed to that, because it's not so much like to shed light. It's not to like condone what we're talking about. It's more so to bring to light what it is to be human.
Correct.
I mean, you know, you know, just because you make it, making being comfortable with like a racist joke, we'll say, is not to say you're racist. It's to say you are aware of the thought processes, the thinking, the whatever. Just you could say the darkness that is behind that. Racism is bad. So if we joke about it, it brings to light that we are still human and we still have thoughts. Like, you cannot tell me that no one ever has a racist thought.
Correct.
Even the most, white privilege, liberal progressives that are just, quote unquote, white knighting the any other race.
Those are the biggest. Well, those are the white supremacists on the left,
right? and so by bringing to light the fact that, hey, we've all thought about this funny thing about Asian people, white people, black people, whatever. We laugh because we're like, oh, this. Well, we're not only laughing because it's funny, but we're laughing because it's not only ridiculous. We're laughing at how ridiculous it is.
Yes.
Which then changes our mindset, because if we can laugh about it, we are more. It makes more of an impression on us to go, don't think like that. Like, if obviously it depends, but I mean, if you're going to just keep covering it up and not saying anything about it and just not addressing it, repression doesn't help at all. It actually can make it worse.
I agree with that.
I sit here and I'll joke about like being half white and half Asian and crack jokes about that, and people kind of go, oh my god. Like, some people I've seen just they'll laugh, but they're kind of uncomfortably laughing.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, but I mean, really think about it though. It's kind of a clusterfuck. Like, I'm half and half, and it's funny. I live it out the way I do, and it's fine. But it's like, the fact that we can laugh about it, joke about it, and be real with it is going to do a heck of a lot more for us just in our minds, psychologically, than it is to just don't talk about it.
I agree with that. I think these things need to be discussed, need to be talked about. We need exposure to it. The whole, and the church isn't doing a great job on any of these fronts.
It's like,
in general,
you can't joke. You do have these like quote unquote Christian comedians that are coming out that definitely like touch on some things. They'll there's a couple that I've seen, they'll get really real about some like issues with certain denominations and their beliefs.
Right.
Excuse me. There's this one guy that I listen to. Every now and then I'll watch some of his videos because he makes some good points. Like, he said, one guy did he pulled up a list, like, TV shows Christians parents don't let their kids watch because of whatever reason. So he just read through this list, Bill Nye the Science Guy because of science, Pokemon because of evolution. He starts naming off all these popular cartoons, Sesame Street because of a gay couple, Ernie and Bert. He just goes through, and he's more making, shedding light on the fact that this is just a bunch of bullshit. Like, people, parents that are making up these, hey, isn't it funny? We had these crazy parents that thought like these shows are stupid because of all these subliminal messages. He goes, yeah, all these shows are bad, but we're watching, a cartoon about vegetables, telling us about Jesus.
Yeah, VeggieTales.
Exactly. Or a guy that would joke, he said, another comedian, he did this piece on like how different denominations have different beliefs on like worship or whatever, or even, he had this joke talking about the Coors Light can. Coors Light had this can that like turned blue when it was cold enough to drink.
Okay.
It was just some design on the can, and he was like, if you cannot trust the nerve endings in your fingers to know that can is cold enough to drink, you probably had too much. And then he says, and all the Baptists in here are freaking out because I just made a liquor reference, and he's like running around in circles like, liquor reference. So there is some of that, but it's still, you know, bringing in those types of people to churches and whatnot are still very much seen as edgy and comedians. There's still there's still a deeper issue. Like, people just don't feel comfortable talking about anything. People
Correct.
don't want to, yeah, they don't want to talk about their life. They don't want to talk about, like, I mean, people dressing as, as nice, or in some cases nicer than the pastor at a prosperity gospel church that have no money in the bank.
Yeah. Yeah.
Giving the whatever they have left because God's supposed to bless them. They have to keep up appearances.
I mean, there's that. And that's very destructive. The whole, give money to be blessed sort of thing. I think that's definitely a blight, and I'm looking forward to that collapsing. And exactly what you're saying, like the comedians get a pass to talk about the truth that's going on in the churches. And everybody knows it because everybody's laughing, but they can't really talk about it, which is that's the repression. That's actually causing some states of mental illness. If you have to disassociate yourself, or you think you're evil, or you think whatever it is, and you have no one to talk to, the church is actually creating a systematic, assembly line of mental illness. And the reason I was actually kind of chuffed that you brought up the Christian comedians, right? Because this is what the church does. They take what they see people enjoying and they stick the fish on it, right? So he's not a comedian, he's a Christian comedian, right? It's not
Christian
a rap
rock.
song. It's not a rock song. It's a Christian rock song. It's Christian skateboard. Well, it's just fucking bullshit, man. This is, and what it is they have become a shadow, a cheap imitation of real life. Like all of the other stuff is people out there, genuinely creating stuff. Right now, I'm not saying that singer, Christian artists, and stuff like that, they're not being genuine. I'm not trying to say that, but they're trying, again, it's all this separation, it's all this kind of disconnect from everything else, and they've made it's branding. This is never what the church was supposed to be. But just like the Jews, for instance, would put kosher beef, the church puts their little Jesus fish on certain things and saying, okay, this is Christ approved, you can play with this, you can listen to that, you can watch this, right? Don't look at that non-Christian stuff. And when the people go and watch the non-Christian stuff, nobody can talk about it, right? Everybody's seen it, but they can't talk about it. And this is that whole behavior is just ridiculously unhealthy for people. But that's, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what are you gonna do? These goddamn
Well, you leave.
Christians. Yeah.
you leave. Right? I mean, I still have pretty deep Christian conversations with people, not regularly, but often enough. We get visitors and we have friends who come by, and different things like that. Sometimes when I'm out here, just having a coffee, I've had some pretty wild experiences. People like falling on the floor and all kinds of crazy things out here. And I just wanted a cup of coffee. Like I didn't want to deal with all this kind of stuff. So I'm not denying that I get some interesting encounters.
Do we have to explain falling in the floor to people what that is?
No, I'm not even going to get into it. I'm not even getting into it. But it does happen. But we, like, seriously, I mean, I have a friend from Northern Ireland. He comes out here. He was at the conference. You might have met him at the conference. And he and I will talk for hours about Christian stuff, about, theology and, all of this kind of mental illness and other stuff like that. And I mean, that's like sometimes a 6-hour church service. We're in the middle of there, but it's a real connection. Like we're really dealing with issues. We're trying to dig deep. And that is what you could only find in that kind of small community groups and, sharing meals or whatever the case might be. You can't get that in, the big churches. And even then they try to get you into like home groups and stuff. And they keep trying to go back to that first model, but it's not the same. It's not organic. It's something else. And yeah, that's cool. I know it's caused a lot of problems for me. I know it's caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. That just not being genuine side.
Yeah. Yeah, because even when I've tried to be genuine with, the people we worked with,
Yeah,
um, it wasn't met too kindly at times.
correct.
Depending upon where you went, hey, I don't really think we should have done this, this, and this. Well, how about you do it? And then it turned into that. I'm like, well, uh,
Yeah,
wasn't what I was getting. Not to get into that too much, but um, yeah, that coming forward and being absolutely honest. Like we know that I was always, well, not always, but I was kind of referred to as someone who was very brutally honest.
yes,
And I would say some things that was just like, hey, just what I noticed. And it would be, received,
yeah.
supposedly.
Sometimes reluctantly, but yeah.
Yeah. Go back to doing it again.
Yeah, yeah. I it's a tough thing. It's and what we see today, I'm really scared. Well, not scared, but I'm kind of glad I'm out of it. And the few
Yeah.
times that I've visited it, I forgot how bad it could be sometimes. Like there was one church we went to not too far from where I live, kind of Assemblies of God something. And I mean, when we were involved in ministry, we were kind of already on the fringe, and these people were hardcore, almost like Baptists in the U.S., like legalistic, get the sin out your life, beat yourself, that kind of stuff. And I was in the church and I'd forgotten that there are people who were less, I don't want to use the word enlightened, but yeah, but it was bad. It was kind of like Westboro Baptist light sort of thing.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I had forgotten a lot of churches are
I
still
mean,
there.
every now and then I come across, I don't, I haven't watched any church services or anything or videos, but what I see is more so pictures. So people will post pictures of themselves in church,
Yeah,
or they'll post something about just whatever they're doing, and uh, and also just that front people put up too.
right, exactly.
It's so weird at times. Um, uh, I made this joke with someone, basically talking about how it's I've when I so okay, I look at certain Christian, whether it's their Instagram or Facebook, whatever they're posting photos on.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, people have siblings, and some get along with them, some don't, and so on. And I have never seen, outside of these Christians,
Hmm.
be so affectionate about their siblings.
Right.
Like you almost think they're dating.
Yes, the love is kind of an uncomfortable,
And
bordering on. Yeah.
yeah, and so I made the joke with some people, like, I always just think like, man, you're not getting that level of affection unless you're fucking or something. Jesus. And that's, and I was like, is this where all, like, is this gonna be like another thing now? Is now you're gonna have like this whole, incest thing going on in churches because they're just trying to keep up like how much they love their siblings that
That's some pretty wild, because I never had any siblings in the church, so I probably never saw that. But yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's messed up. It is messed up.
But that's all in the name of like keeping up, like, you have a great life, you have great friends, you have great relationships with your parents and your siblings and just about anyone else that um and yeah, I mean, just, yeah, the lack of genuine behavior really is just ridiculous. People aren't really talking to each other about anything. um
That's
you know
ironic, isn't it? We have more communication now than ever before, and people. I mean, we have to be fair because we are far removed from the church community. We don't really know what they're saying and doing. Maybe it's better. Let's hope so. But at least from our experience, people. I mean, yeah, we were all very well connected. And even when we had our split, we had a breakdown of communication. Like we were connected on all kinds of stuff, and we had this guy basically, drop the hammer, didn't consult us, and he just like, this is how it's going to be. And then we have a discussion after he's already made the decision.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation around that, I mean, was really just, hey, because so we went to this guy's house, on separate occasions, ourselves or in groups, before this whole thing happened. And I would always go like, so we had our difference of opinion. We had our difference on like how to go about church, how to communicate with each other, specific doctrine kind of, theology kind of issues.
Yes.
And I would go, hey, so and so believes in this. What do you think about that? Because I'm like trying to get the conversation going.
Yes.
And it turned to, well, that may be so, but I cannot deny that he's my brother and he's a man of God.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, that should be good enough then, right?
No. Yeah, exactly.
No, wasn't. Because the conversation went away from that. Now it's just, we just didn't talk, Yeah. And again, and that was probably like another Christianese thing. Correct. Yeah, he's a brother in Christ. He's a man of God. But it wasn't really addressing the real issue of like, we don't agree on some things.
Yeah. I mean, it's the diplomatic response. And that's what I'd say. I said, look, you do you. We don't agree on everything. But yeah, we're one in the Lord, or whatever the Christianese phrase is for that kind of stuff. And as you say, that's a way to get around the disagreements. But that's actually right. That's actually correct, though.
It's correct, but we still didn't have that extra layer of raw communication that was needed.
Correct.
So as much as we tried to break away from the Christianese and the dogmatic views, the just all of that, it still fucked with things.
Exactly.
It still made us go like, oh, we still didn't talk about the real issues. We still didn't get to touch on what's really bothering, us.
Correct.
And it just kind of, it's like a wound. It festers and just kind of, people get away from it. Like, we're not touching that. Not to get too much into that.
And I mean, again, this whole thing about, not allowing people to be themselves. Like, I remember very vividly, and I look forward to doing like a red pill and Christianity discussion. I think that's, we were supposed to be on a bigger stream to do that. But I think you and I could probably have a very good discussion on that.
Yeah.
And we could probably tag certain people and say, hey, well, look, we had the talk anyway. But early on, when I've not necessarily first got into the church, but a little while in, I was very much into like the pickup artist kind of stuff, the David D'Angelo stuff, back in the early days, early 2000s kind of thing. And so I had my Christian conversion experience when I was like 18, stayed out of the church until much later, and then I kind of came back. And one of the first things, I was actually on a television show about dating. And I was telling the people at this church when I kind of come back to visit that, yeah, I'm going to be on this television show about relationships and dating and pickup and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, oh, what's that about, And I said, well, it's all about the mindset and, his game and stuff like that. And the woman basically said to me, oh, that's of the devil. I was like, why is that of the devil? And it's because, oh, well, you have to manipulate people's mind. That's of the devil. And I was like, well, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, don't you do that in the church? Like, don't you try to persuade people to join the church? Like, isn't that manipulated? Well, it's not coercive, but it's suggestive, right? It's pressure. I said, it's the same thing. And she's like, oh, no. And because I was young and stupid, I didn't have any theology back then. I was just like, oh wow, that's demonic. I better stop doing that. And I did. I did. I still went on the show. God, I'd love to find those clips. But I stopped the game pickup artist thing for a good while I was in church. And I was really good at it. I really understood it. I understood it immediately, and I understood game and all this other kind of stuff. And I was teaching people. I was taking people to the clubs and all kinds of stuff.
Satan worshiper, you?
Yeah. I mean, clearly the devil's work. And ironically, now that I'm older and I'm out here and I'm presently single, it's kind of like, shit, man. I could have had so much more experience if I had just stuck with this. And now I'm rusty at it and I'm older, I don't look as good and everything else. So now I've got to get back into that. Get a girlfriend again, ironically,
Right.
Yeah, but that's what's going on.
Well, there's definitely more to that than just the pickup thing. I didn't. So I think I told you. So when I first started learning about red pill, I started kind of. You came over, and last time when you came over and we hung out, and you got to meet my family and all this, and you made your observations about different things you saw, and
Sure.
Not to get into the details, but I tried sharing this with some people that not the individuals involved, but just other people. And then there was a lot of Christian, some of them had some Christian background. And because I noticed, hey, this person acts like this because this, that, and the other. It wasn't necessarily pickup or anything. It was more so just the dynamic in the room.
Yeah.
And I tried sharing all this, and it said, yeah, it makes sense because this, and this, that, and the other, and this thing over here, and people tend to behave this way. And it kind of came around like, oh yeah, it tends to make sense. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll just say this: it was with my siblings. I was talking about this, and they all kind of were like, okay, this is interesting, and my mother. So
there you go.
Exactly. So they're kind of like getting it, and then kind of turned back around to then kind of the religious side of it kind of came up. Well, yeah, that all makes sense and this sounds great, but but God made us to be like, this way. And it's like, right. Okay. It's like it was difficult because I couldn't quite say, yeah, we evolved to behave a certain way. And it's like, whoa, the E word. Yeah, the big E word with Christians. It's not like they're straight up just going to say like, oh, evolution's not true. But at the same time, it's like, because it's something of the mind and it's something of observing people through science,
right?
It's it's not that anyone was like, it's demonic, but it's kind of like, seems like scheming, almost.
Right.
Controlling. It seems not quite Christ-like.
Yes. No, I get that. And I think again that is the problem. There is so much. Look, the Bible has, Christianity, all that has its flaws and its benefits and everything else. But they're definitely, it's not helping people be themselves. It's not helping. Well, depending on your interpretation, I guess. And that kind of default back to the traditions, it's definitely short-circuiting people. And an example of that, of course, is, okay, obviously in the Christian church, sex before marriage is a no-no, right? So, you and not a university student are both going to hell.
Oh,
but
boy.
Anyway. So here's the dilemma. Right? They want young people to abstain from sex. Okay. You tell people who basically are being bombarded with raging teenage hormones from hell to abstain from any kind of sexual activity. Okay, wait till you're married. But the problem is that we're waiting longer and longer to get married. I am 38 and I'm not married, right? So if you're telling a human being to basically cork it up until they get married. Like for me, that would be, 38 years of my life. And you expect that just to be cool? Just like that sexual urge is just going to chill for 38 plus years? Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
So this is a problem. This is why you start having you start to have problems with, well, you start to have this, we'll just say, sexual deviancy.
Correct.
People that just start doing all sorts of things to, like, the mind wants to find a way. Your body's going to want to find a way to do something.
Correct.
And it's going to try to, like, look at the scriptures and trying to find loopholes. Not to, no pun intended there.
Not glory holes, right?
Dude, don't even.
Maybe you're going to find a couple of those too.
Yeah, people do all sorts of things, and then that's why it's like, the most dogmatic, the most hardcore churches along the Bible Belt surprisingly become, the gay belt.
Yeah.
Or just become the sexual deviancy belt. I mean, people that are, you have these pastors that are like fucking a dozen hookers,
Yeah, prostitution, well, of course, the porn off the charts, gay sex clubs. Oh, I mean, and that's again the issue, because there's nowhere. Yeah, go ahead.
Granted, not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but
no, of course not.
The hypocrisy just goes off the charts.
Correct.
Because you're not addressing humanity. I think if people are changing the way they go about, like, hey, don't be a bunch of freaking sluts. Like, I think that's not too hard to kind of try to go for. But it's like,
might be a bit much to ask today, but okay.
But it's like, if you kind of like be a little more lenient and say, hey, we know you're all teenagers. We want you to at least be smart, but also be aware of like what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it can have an effect on you. Yeah, you're going to do things. We know you're going to do things, and a lot of you are doing things.
Yeah.
And we're not. What are we going to do? We're not going to sit here with a straight face and say, "Oh God, this," and sin that. It's like, shit's happening. You're human. I mean,
correct.
But you're not necessarily going to say, "All right, fuck your brains out." No. But at least be aware of like how, we've there's the, so then this is, I think, where the red pill can come in, is kind of like a more red pilled idea of mindset, I should say, of looking at this like, hey, if you screw around too much, there's always the risk of disease, there's always the risk of pregnancy, there's the risk of the mental and emotional aspect of what that could do to you.
Sure.
Exposing yourself that way. Those are all valid things to talk about and to kind of bring up and say, and here's what the Bible feels about it. Mm-hmm. And it's, probably makes sense because of these reasons, because the Bible, tends to promote either being single as a minister or getting married and having kids. So you can talk about all this and kind of go, okay, that's a more well-rounded perspective to like include like the fact that kids are kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
but none of that is addressed.
It's, if she touches your penis, man, you're both going to hell. Like, you haven't even done anything yet and you're going to hell. Like, getting a boner is going to hell. Jesus.
No, that was my issue, because I was like raging as a teenager.
As are most kids.
yeah, especially in the morning, man. It was like high salute, and I remember because when I was younger, going through all this stuff, I was taught all this stuff, sexuality is bad, whatever. And I get this raging hard on in the morning, take someone's eye out kind of thing. And I would literally be there like, no, go down. Just because of all of the Christian bullshit that had been stuffed into my head. And
yeah.
It's definitely fucked me up in a lot of ways that I'm still dealing with. But yeah, that unhealthy attitude, and this is, the church is just sweeping everything under the carpet.
Yeah. It's oh my gosh, there's so many things on that, because I don't know what they told the girls in church, but I know what they told the boys, which was like, you know, it was a strong push to say like, well, what's too far? What if you're both naked and nothing's really happening? What if this? What if that? I mean, they actually had a in-depth conversation with us, like 14-year-old boys, like, if touching each other is too far, if this, I there was I think there was like some article. I don't know if it was a joke. It seemed too real. Like Christian teenagers are experimenting more with anal in order to get around the loophole of
Right, right.
intercourse or something. And it was like,
Virginity, yeah.
it was like,
Sure.
it's like you can't just say it. I mean, you laugh at that, but it's like, what else do you expect? People
That's
are
what's
going to
going to happen.
That's what's going to happen. Yeah,
I mean, it's the same thing in the Catholic Church where the priests are not allowed to marry. Now, we all know of the scandals, pedophilia, all of these types of things that go on in the Catholic Church. But a big reason that is the case, huge reason, is because priests are not allowed to marry in the Catholic Church.
So that's those sexual urges kind of get fucked up.
Exactly.
They go the wrong way.
Exactly. Because that energy is not directed healthily, and they have to be in denial, right? They've got to be, you're denying a part of yourself. This is exactly what I'm saying. This is the problem with all religion, is trying to disconnect you from yourself. That's where this deviance comes from, right? So, and in their mind, in the priest's mind, right? Well, if you do it with a girl, that's sex. But if you do it with a boy, they rationalize and say that's not the same thing, right? I mean, I know that's sick and twisted.
It's twisted, but here's the thing: is just it's not like they're consciously necessarily thinking that.
Correct.
You get these beliefs, you get these rigid ideals pressed, just shoved down your throat.
Yeah.
And it just sits there in your subconscious and it cooks pretty much. And it's like,
Correct.
you have all this energy and your brain starts to rationalize. By the time you're already doing it, you don't even think you're doing anything wrong.
Yeah. Well, we could rationalize anything, and that's exactly what they do in the framework of their Catholic tradition.
That's the thing, and that's the problem, though, is the rationalization. If you set up walls to human nature, human nature is going to dig a hole and try to figure this out.
Correct.
It's like, I'm not staying in here. I'm going to do something, even if it's not necessarily right.
Yeah. It's like, it's the balloon analogy. You squeeze one side of the balloon and the other side just pops up, kind of thing. You think you've solved it here, but it's really just moved it around. And this is what ends up happening when people. It'll drive you crazy. You will mentally just wear yourself out. And when you get free of it, and you just explode. You just wanted to, like, when I first came to the understanding of what we call the grace message, and I understood, look, all of this rigid thinking and all this condemnation thing was garbage, I partied it up. Like, I suddenly realized I can just be myself. I went out drinking, I went out partying, I was doing all kinds of stuff because all of that was in me, but it was repressed. And now that I was free of it, it came out, and it came out in abundance. And then after a while, you kind of get back to normal, and it's like, oh, okay, right, that's, I got that out of my system. And that's what ends up happening with a lot of people. And some of them throw themselves into like atheism and just some extreme, because it's all built up.
Imagine if you like removed the rule in the Catholic Church regarding marriage or even sex. Imagine how many nuns would get pregnant overnight.
Probably. Well, I mean, there's plenty of nuns getting pregnant now that you just don't hear of, right? So it's going on anyway. But
yeah, it's just, yeah, they're gonna, it could solve the problem. I think a majority of it. At least.
I think so. I think, and it's based on a foolish premise that Peter wasn't married, but there's actually a scripture that talks about Jesus healing Peter's mother-in-law. Right, so you can't have a mother-in-law without a wife. So Peter had a wife, but that's where it came from. And then Paul would talk about it's better to be single That to be, like for young people, it's better to be single than, but if you're burned with lust, you should marry, whatever. And he says he preferred that people would stay like him, and everybody just assumed he was not married. No, but Paul was probably widowed. He was a Pharisee, so Pharisees had to marry. So he was elderly and he was widowed, and he's like, well, he's just going to serve the Lord in his old age. But people take that and they've made a doctrine to be like, well, you should stay single. It's better to stay single, right? But it never condemns marriage. But that's the tradition. That's how we got here.
Well, is it pastors should be good husbands because then that shows that they're a good head of their household or something?
That's a whole other can of worms, because that puts that same pressure on the entire family. And PKs, right? Pastors' kids, how they respond to that kind of thing.
Right. But I mean, it kind of, yeah, okay. No, all right. Actually, now that makes more sense.
Yeah.
The pastor's kid thing is a whole another thing, because then that's the pastor like pressing down. I'm saying like just being a man.
Right. And I think that's the discussion we should have. Like red pill Christianity. What is it? What do we think it looks like? In terms of the frame of religion and stuff like that. And how is the church not doing that? I think that would be a very helpful discussion, because this is all very anecdotal and stuff.
I could probably bring someone on.
Maybe you can. And we could probably do a couple chats about that, and let's see how it goes. But how we doing on time?
We're right about there. So anything quick you want to add, Brook?
No, keep us posted on Not a University Student.
As usual.
It's quite a fun segment. And anybody out there, I'm single now, so bitches be crazy. You could start like DMing me and shit like that, right? Just putting that out there.
If you would like to definitely like, comment, and subscribe to the video, guys. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Our podcast is hosted through Podbean, so you can check us out there. Of course, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like and comment in the video. Follow both of us on social media. That's Brook is at Brook_Potter on Twitter. Also I'm guessing the DMs are open there, right?
Yes, they are.
And I am at Amos Joe on Twitter as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and we will see you guys next week, Sunday, 11 o'clock Central Time.
Thanks for watching, guys.